have a chauffeur. It's probably Barry's inside getting my children's lunch for their last day of school from Sheets. Don't tell me I'm not a great mom. I'm a great mom.
My life. Your job is to keep them alive, and you're
That's right.
doing
I was like,
great.
I can ride in the passenger seat. You go for it. All right, we're rocking and rolling, friends. We're live streaming on YouTube. Ashley, I'll let you take it away, gal pal.
Oh, great. So we thought it would be fun. Well, I like to rope people in last minute to everything. So I thought, let me get two awesome agents on our team. So one of the fun things we found out this year is that our team call group right here in Raleigh is number 25 in the nation in mega teams, which is really exciting. We beat out Selling Sunset. So some of the fun things on our placement, and we work hard, we run scripts, we meet with each other every single week, and we're putting in the work. So Sarah is our script battle queen at call group. Literally, we had a script battle and she won that. So she's just so good with words and getting people through conversations and getting them to realize what is going on in this situation and then navigating them through it. And Trevor has been getting, I think, 3% buyer compensation when he's been working with buyers, and some listings at 4%. So I thought it would be good to have them come on and kind of talk about scripting, ask questions, and have it be collaborative. I can lead with some questions that I thought about, but I want to know, where are you guys getting stuck in conversations? Whether it's with the NAR script or, what people are hearing in the media. Because I literally was at a listing appointment the other night for 2 hours talking through some of that. And, hey, I didn't think I was going to pay commissions anymore. And, just bringing people through where the money is coming from. So, Sarah, you had some really good things. We actually did like a quick script battle at our team meeting yesterday, but tell me about how you're working your strategy with new buyers. So like, we're a heavy Zillow team. We have a lot of leads that come in through realtor.com, Zillow, HomeLight. Like, we probably are not knowing these buyers up front. So it's a different conversation. So how are you starting that? Because I heard you on the phone prepping before you're going to meet someone Saturday and talking about not pushing paperwork in their face. So I love the way you said it.
Yeah, I think one of my insecurities, right, is a lack of rapport if we have a change of pace with paperwork and getting things to be signed. And full transparency, I mean, my goal has always been to get a buyer in the office or at a coffee shop and have a consult in a perfect world before seeing a home. But we know with online leads, that's just not reality. These leads come in, they're hoping to see the house on the one day of the week that works for them, right? Or within the next 3 hours. So it's not always realistic to expect them to be able to have a consult. I know our team pushes that big. That's always been my best practice, but we have to pivot sometimes. So now, to answer your question, Ashley, the way that I'm approaching it is I give them a call. That's also kind of against Zillow's lack of friction policy, but I give them a call. Instead of just shooting them a text to confirm time and place. And I just introduce myself. I don't even start talking about paperwork. I just ask them, what had you interested in this home? I'm looking forward to our appointment just to kind of confirm day and time. Does this still work well for you? Always they say yes. And then I'm just, explaining to them. So there's been a little bit of shift in policy in the real estate world. How familiar are you with touring agreements that need to be signed prior to checking out the house? Just to kind of get some background, right? There's going to be the know-it-alls that are like, oh, yeah, no problem. Let me sign it. And I'm like, okay. And then there's going to be some people who have no idea, which is the majority. And I just explained to them, so have you ever purchased a home before? Yes or no? In this instance, this person has purchased a home. So I said, perfect. Well, you had a professional relationship with a broker then at that time. They represented you, I would imagine, in that transaction. You signed an agreement that gave them the fiduciary duty to be your agent, protect your best interests, etc. Well, in order to protect you from the very beginning, we're now asking that we get this tour agreement signed. And I want to explain the three most important parts about it. Number one, that it is for the property we will be seeing. Unless you are ready to jump into a 6-month agreement with me upfront before us meeting, I would imagine it'd make more sense for us to kind of have our first date at this house and go ahead and meet each other face to face. Does that sound fair to you? And they're like, yeah, because that's very agreeable. And again, this person couldn't meet with me beforehand. So I'm just kind of going to step 2 or route 2. And for this instance, he said, yeah, that's no problem. I said, okay, well, the next 2 important pieces I need you to be aware of is you're also going to be signing and initialing the fact that our agreement is for this home for a period of 2 days. And then if you were to decide to move forward on this home, I would just expect that you would come back to me and we would be working with each other officially for about a span of, I think, 30 or 60 days, whatever I said. And then the last piece was just my commission. My commission is 3%. I would imagine in your last experience, that was potentially covered by sellers, likely what you remember. I can't say that that's entirely always the case, but as a good negotiator, I'm going to make sure I can do my best to make that happen. Or do you have any questions about those 3 important parts of this touring agreement? He said, no, that's no problem. Send it my way. I'll sign. And I said, perfect. All I ask in return is for you to keep an open mind that I will be asking you for a follow-up appointment so we can have a consultation to move forward together or not. And he was in full agreement. I've done this maybe 4 times so far with Zillow leads, and every time I've gotten a consult. So I am kind of using this, since this is a bulk of my business, I'd love to do a 6-month right off the bat. I'd love to get the consult, but if it's not the right time and place, I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot. I'm going to get them to the door, which is, we always want to get face-to-face first.
That was so good. And some of the takeaways that I wrote, I think what you're so good at is asking questions. How familiar are you with touring agreements? How have you ever purchased a home before? Like, you get people talking, and so you get them to give you all the information you need, which I feel like I could do much better at. So I know I need to role play with you and just ask a bunch of questions, which I ask questions in other ways, in order to protect you from the beginning. And I like how you said, I would imagine, or using kind of more of those Phil Jones words. So I love that. I think that's super. How familiar are you with the, what's going on, and getting them to tell you what they know before we just say, well, what do you know about the market? Versus us being like, this is how the market is.
Right. And I always just preface it with, my style is for us to use that entire time to get to know one another and to see if this home even checks your boxes. I would hate for us to have to go through this paperwork on the front step before I can even unlock the lockbox. It's just doesn't seem very professional to me. So I would rather us have this time up front. And then that way you're free to ask me any questions prior and you do not feel rushed to sign something. And then they love that. I mean, I think the biggest thing with us we have to remember is that this is new to us. And for most people, they don't even really remember what they did last time. They also, things change, I'm sure, in their work too. So this is just, we have to act like it's normal and like we're coming from a good place. Not like it's this big burden and we have to scare ourselves and scare other people. Just act like it's normal and that you're going to make sure you can take care of them once you're face to face.
Mm-hmm. And you called it, I know Victoria put in there, is touring agreement your own term or a North Carolina term? I think it comes from Zillow, right? Like, we had like a touring agreement. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a single showing, exclusive agency agreement that we have them sign. And then Zillow has their own. We're not using Zillow's, but I'm just using that because that sounds friendly. I mean, if you're already going through Zillow, you're probably inputting some information, I would imagine. It just makes sense. Before you go to see anyone, you've got to fill out some paperwork. So it just seems less abrasive.
Yeah. Trevor, do you want to chime in anything on what you've been talking about with buyers, or do you want to go into some of the listing side on the kind of new stance?
Yeah, well, I want to say that, of course, Sarah is always excellent on the scripts, the questions and the professionalism. It's awesome. All of my interactions on this with buyers have been converting existing buyers over, to the new rules and explaining that, except for one case that was just before the change, and just let her know what was coming because we met before it was required and then got everything done, once the change happened. All of my conversations around this with new people lately have been with sellers.
Yeah. And I know you've been on some of your listings getting 4% even before the changes came out. So what is that? I mean, you really haven't had any pushback. You were just saying this is our fee and this is what we do for you, and just kind of moving forward through it. Cause I know that's been kind of a sticky term for some people, or everyone's getting a little nervous about that, where the fees are coming from and what does that look like?
Yeah, I was for a while. I just decided to try it and try to for 7%, and really just when it makes sense, and that felt really good, and I knew I was presenting value, and I always closed with my net sheet, so I just closed with it as a matter of fact. These are the three pricing scenarios. Here are the fees you should expect. This is your net in these three different scenarios, and I didn't really have pushback. Um, and then, it's always a case by case, right? And if it were a situation where that wasn't really feasible for the client, it's not, well, I wasn't really pushing it hard. And since the changes, I've been more careful, right? So I'm still pushing for 3.6 for our professional fee. And the way I've been explaining it is, you know, for the last 5, 6 decades, this has been the norm. Well, things have changed. Here's why. Here's the settlement info. Here are the new rules and the new laws. And so in years past, I would come in and tell you we're charging you 6% and we're going to share with a cooperating brokerage. Well, that's not the case now. I'm charging you 3.6%, and we can discuss what amount, if any, you want to offer to the buyer broker for compensation. And you can just sort of see that really initially people are hearing, oh, it's not 6 anymore, it's 3.6. But then I do bring them back to reality and just let them know about competitive advantage and opening up to the entire pool of buyers and the natures of buyers in the market. Ashley, you said something a minute ago that is so important. People don't do this every day and talk about this every day like we do. Most people, because of home ownership, like the nature of that, they haven't, even if they've done it 3 times, they haven't done it in the last 5 or 6 years. And there's been so many changes, and they didn't absorb everything on their last transaction. So people really look to us to guide them and help them understand what the options are, especially with this new change with the buyer broker.
Yeah, and while you were saying that, something just popped in my head. What would probably be really good on the sell side is a frequently asked questions on the settlement, like because
that's
there's
good.
so much, to send ahead of time of your listing appointment, because I spent, an hour or more going through why the commission really isn't shifting. I mean, it is negotiable. It always was, but the seller thought they were going to pay just one fee, like 3%, because this was happening in September. So they had actually been waiting and waiting to put their house on the market. And I said, in a market right now where we have less showings on homes, we actually have a lot of homes that are out there available, and we're not getting a lot of showings on them. If there's no broker compensation, brokers might not be bringing the buyer to the house, or the buyer might not be, directing their agent to go there because they need to now pay for that. So I understand where you're coming from, and I understand that you're hearing all this in the media. Let me tell you what is actually going on. So maybe debunking with the frequently asked questions before we even get there. I mean, again, it's like what Sarah said, if people are not like so in tune to it, it's like you don't need to go into this rabbit hole and then they're down the line. But if it's an objection on the call or the conversation, that's maybe now a question for our pre-qual. Like, what do you know about the new settlement? Because if that's something that we need to like focus on when we get there, maybe that could help.
I think that's a great idea to put that in the prequel. I hadn't thought of that. When NCAR released the forms in July, they did release a new seller advisory, like FAQ, essentially, like some bullet points. I saved it. I can send it to you. I know it's in .loop and available on zip forms and everything. So.
And if anyone has questions while we're talking, just raise your hand if you have something, or if you have an objection, or like Amber, if your team has been seeing things on the buy side or the sell side, like things that have worked, things that haven't worked. A lot of times when I come on and I'm, running the meeting or kind of trying to do stuff, I love for it to be collaborative and answer questions, because I feel like strategizing and like going, oh, that's something I didn't think about. Maybe I can use that line. That's super helpful, instead of me just kind of talking at you. I mean, again, yesterday at our meeting, Sarah said something in the script battle, and Vanessa and I on our team turned to each other like, that is a genius thing. Like, we hadn't heard that before. So it's those little nuggets of a one-liner now you can take and go use somewhere else.
We personally are seeing more, I would say pushback and issues with other agents. It's not even really the consumer. So that's like what we're navigating more than anything, and like stopping and taking time and slowing down and like educating them on like, what does our inner processes look like? And just, that's the consumers are just here. Honestly, we have not had anybody push back on anything.
Is it more so on the agent side, like you
Yeah.
have a listing and then they're asking for compensation and you're like, send me your 220 form or send me what you have, and they're like, I'm not going to show the house, or I don't want to show it unless I know
Yeah.
it. That's the pushback.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been having like 30-minute conversations with agents. Like, you're putting your commission in front of your client's desires. And I'm point blank telling them, like, I have not had one seller not pay 2.5 to 3. And some of my sellers, I have 3 right now that are under contract at 3%, that previously the listing agreement had 2.5%. So I'm just like taking time to slow down with the other agents and making them like think, like, know your value, ask for it. If you hit my seller's net, we'll probably pay you a 3% commission. All of our buyers agents are at 3 to 4% right now on every pending. So that's what we're dealing with more than consumers.
Sarah, how would you deal with that? So like if Amber was the listing agent and you called, I mean, you're already setting clear expectations of your buyer agency agreement and you're really good and firm about that, but there's a lot of people that aren't. And I think Tina had spoke on this too. I mean, there's a lot of agents that just aren't strong enough to have the conversation up front, and they just knew that there was compensation being offered so they could go open the door and it was okay. But you're going to have to get really good at like, what is your value? And here's the number. So if you have it on Amber's side of like, well, just write us an offer, and we're open to compensation, but just send us an offer. I mean, you're just filling out a 220 and sending it over, right? You're not like having a big hoorah about it.
Are you asking me what I would do if I were,
Yes.
if I had
The
a phone
buyer
call from a
agent.
buyer's agent?
No, I'm asking
The
Amber.
buyer's agent.
Yeah, you're the buyer's agent. Amber is your, yeah.
I mean, I think because we're all educated, we probably all have the same the same mindset as far as like, I'm never going to just sit there and assume the worst, right? I mean, it's already hard enough for half of these buyers to find the one, right? And they're getting pickier day by day. I certainly would never want to shoot myself in the foot. However, I think if I were a buyer's agent and I'm calling, and maybe I have some apprehension because maybe my buyers are very tight and I'm very concerned, but I'm working with a listing agent who maybe doesn't have a 220, I would simply just say, I imagine with all the changes, you've already had these conversations with your seller about the possible, outcomes of our offers, right? They're all going to look a little bit different nowadays. Now, can you share with me, does it seem like they're giving you any indication that they're going to be buyer agent friendly? If they say yes, I'm not, then it is what it is, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and, I don't need the percentage, right? I can go ahead and tell my client. So for verbiage for that, I'm going to turn on and tell my client, great news. They're really encouraging us to check out the home. I mean, of course they are. They're trying to sell it. And I'm also going to tell you, reading the climate and reading this listing, it's been sitting for a couple weeks. There's no reason for me to believe that if they're telling me we're buyer agent friendly, that we should not be going there with our mindset set as your advisor is going to fight for you and get that commission covered. So I mean, how upset would you be if we skipped this house and then I learned that they ended up paying their buyer's agent 3% and gave the buyer some closing costs? Like that would really stink, wouldn't it? It's the same thing as the way I look at it, right? Because I talk with new agents all the time and they're like, oh my gosh, look how many showings there are booked. Look at, like how overpriced this is. This isn't even worth seeing. And I'm like, why? Why is it not worth seeing? Like, do you already know what they're willing to accept? Because unless you know that, then there's no reason to already, get into this fixed mindset. Like, go in there, know what you're going to offer, and convince your client that you feel strong about it. Because the only reason a client's going to say absolutely not is because you as their guide is showing any doubt. right? So that's the way I look at it. If you're a buyer's agent, just be strong, be confident, because at the end of the day, it might not have anything to do with your damn commission, and it has to do with your closing time, your due diligence fee. It has nothing to do with your commission. So just don't scare yourself.
I had two conversations yesterday, Sarah, and you spoke right to them, and I think they're so important. Number one, I'm struggling. I'm just like you, Amber. Our struggles are all agent to agent conversations. It's killing our productivity. It's killing our ability to work. It's honestly killing our ability to service our clients and enjoy our families and enjoy what we do, because we're just in the pits with agent to agent conversations. But one thing that we talked about yesterday was, I feel like in some ways the same agents today that are telling me that they're not going to show our properties without a pre-negotiated 220 in their hands are the same agents that for 6 months would run buyers around in houses with no buyer agency, that also in the exact same position that you had the potential to not be paid. So like that's kind of a mind-boggling thought to me, is that like you're more entitled to compensation now showing the property with some kind of agreement than you were last week, right? When there was no compensation in the MLS, but you didn't have to have that. And then secondly, I think the argument is, yeah, I have sellers all the time that tell me I'm not making any repairs to this property. I'm not doing anything with this property. And then they see the reality of the market and it all becomes negotiable. So for the agents that I think have had conversations with their buyers and they've shared the scary piece of having to pay the commission, and that's what they've harped on, and in return they've gotten buyers that have said, I don't want to look at houses that are not offering compensation. And I think that the agents are taking such a high liberty with that's what they're starting the conversation with. And it's like, well, that's no different than you telling me you want to move in ready home, or whatever, and we go look for it and we find an opportunity and we make that happen. And like I just think that everyone is missing the point that there are negotiations that happen. Sellers' mindsets change, buyers' mindsets change, and limiting the pool of what they're going to go look at, I feel like is a violation of that fiduciary duty on a buyer's agent's point of view. So Sarah, it was just really refreshing to hear you say that, because I was thinking maybe I was crazy and that no one else understood the negotiation process the way that I did. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, but Anna, I gotta say though, all of us, I think Sarah said it on this call, we're all very growth minded. And you got to remember the masses, we're the top 20%, let's just say in the industry, probably top 5%. The masses are selling 2 homes a year. They don't know how to navigate this. So our biggest challenge is exactly what you said, Amber, Anna, is the agent, not the consumer. Like this is the first time ever where buyer agents are going to be able to make more than listing agents, my feeling. And so these agents that call in, that's why we kind of went, okay, we're not going to offer compensation up front, meaning we're not going to tell them, but we're going to encourage it. Hey, my seller's willing to pay between 2.5% to 3%. I think that's where they should pay. So I heard somebody yesterday say 2 to 2.5. I go, why would you set the bar at 2? Number one, but anyway, I don't agree. 2.5 to 3.5%. Bring me your offer. And it's just that education right now that 70-80% of these agents, and these are 20-year veterans, are losing their minds because they have to go back and they're afraid to charge their client. They're actually just afraid to have that exact conversation that you might have to pay me, because they don't ever see themselves as salespeople. They see themselves as, oh, I'm an advisor. Okay, great, but you're in sales. So we're in an industry of non-salespeople that happen to be door openers and good advisors, and they have good hearts, but they don't understand value of themselves.
All right, is that it? So Sarah, I wanted to pick your brain while I had you. The thought that we had yesterday in one of our meetings was we're not sending out pre-signed 220s. Like we're not doing that, but we are having the encouraging conversation of our sellers are open to paying a buyer's agent. I have not gone as far, Tina, as adding the range. One of the thoughts we had yesterday was, is there an alternative to the 220? Is there a form not a form, but is there a letter that we should maybe be looking at drafting to encourage that we are buyer agent friendly, that would replace the stickiness of like the negotiation of the compensation was premeditated and already in place? And I'm just curious if anyone has any thoughts on, is there another piece of the puzzle that we could put in there that would give that confidence to those buyers agents without putting ourselves, I think, in the added liability of just having pre-negotiated compensation forms floating around on all of our listings.
I mean, it's one of those things, I think, and I'm full transparency. I am entirely buyers, right? So I'm going to be thinking on the phase of a buyer's agent. Now, for me, it's encouraging enough to have a phone call. Now, I'm sure for some people, maybe they need to see something in writing, right? So is it a text message? I mean, is it an email from your personal email? I mean, I don't know, but I think some people just like to see people put it down so then it feels like they have something they can go off of to instill confidence in themselves to then share with their buyer. So they don't look like the bad guy later on. I don't know. I don't know if there's something else. Maybe someone else can chime in there. But honestly, it's almost, I would think that it's almost like you kind of have to read the climate of the listing. I mean, there's going to be those listings that you're like, there's not even a need for us to really push this. We're going to have, you know, so many people coming in, or we're going to have this influx of buyers first weekend, second weekend. We've got the traffic, and maybe it's kind of like those price reduction conversations or those any other type of conversations that you have to just, that's like your last ditch effort to then go back to those agents. God forbid the reason they didn't even proceed with anything was because of their lack of confidence in asking about commission or selling it to their buyer. I don't know.
Yeah. We have listings that have been sitting with price reductions, and I still have agents that are emailing saying we're not going to show without a confirmation of compensation, which at that point we go back to our sellers and we tell them what's up and we let them make the decision, which is I think what we're supposed to do. But you know, again, it's just like, I love how you said that. It's reading the listing. I want to be like, oh my God, like, what do you want? Like, what commission do you want? 802 Old Baron, you heard it here on this call. Like, go tell me what you want. Go sell it today. Like, we want to get it sold like today, you know? And like, that's the thing that I feel like is missing. Is just like that borderline, like common sense of like, what does the listing tell you?
And I think that's where some of this is like so counterintuitive. You can say 2.5 commission, but just go show the house and make the offer. It's all negotiable. Even if I tell you a certain amount, it's not set in stone. So like getting these forms signed that are then negotiable makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Amber, I was gonna ask, are your agents showing the houses? Like if let's say there's, you know, you go show a house, they say they're buyer agent friendly. You say you're buyer agent friendly, and then you go show the house, your client wants to write an offer with the 220. Are you sending it over at whatever 2.5%, 3%, getting it signed before you send the actual offer over?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I think it depends upon the agent on the other side. What we're seeing is like our local Alamance County agents are behind the 8 ball. So we're probably a month behind what you guys are seeing. The Raleigh agents that we're working with that are coming here want that 220 signed immediately. Like they're so afraid, and then they're sending us the offers unsigned as well. But I had a Raleigh agent yesterday, and it's on a new construction, and I point blank told him he's offering 2.5%. He would not send me the offer till I got the 220 signed. And I said, my builder is not signing this. He's not wasting his time to come off the job site to sign a 220 when we don't even have the offer in place yet. And I said, send the offer. So I eventually got him talked into it. What I'm seeing is just case by case, and it almost comes down to what relationships do we have with these other agents and how much are they willing to trust us. And for me, I'm sometimes seeing it's harder for like the local agents here because they're so uneducated about it versus agents coming from Raleigh, them not knowing me, they don't trust me, but I'm still saying, hey, I'm going to get you paid. Like, I just need to make sure that the net's met with my seller, just bring us an offer. And
Yeah.
I've had to have some like coming to Jesus meetings with a few of these agents. And I point blank told this one agent, if you call every single listing agent and 5 out of 7 just say, bring me offers, and you tell your buyer client that you're not going to show those houses, I guarantee that buyer client's going somewhere else sooner versus later. Like, you cannot block people from seeing houses that they're interested in because you're worried about your commission. It's all over the place.
I think the fear for agents in that way is like, we all know what we're doing. We've been in the business a while. We feel like, you know, we're coming from a good place. and this
Yeah.
is our job. And, you know, like what you just said, I'm going to get you paid. That's the same feeling I have. Like certain things over negotiating due diligence. And I'm like, oh gosh, it's past 5 o'clock. We've already agreed upon it. Like, I know me personally, I am good for that. Like I am the
Do the
person.
right thing.
You're doing the right thing. My seller's doing the right thing. It's out for signature. Sorry, it's late, whatever it is. But there's a lot of people that might not be that way. And so they're going to the depths of, oh my gosh, what could happen? And then I can't get paid. And then what's going to go on? I'm working for free. So it's that fear of not having that signature to like, which we know it's negotiable still, right? Like even after the offer comes in, but it's that fear of not getting it signed up front. And I don't know if I'm getting paid. And I don't know if you're telling the truth that you are going to get me paid. I think that is where all of, even through all these text messages we see in our leaders group, I think that's where the fear lies, is in that gap.
But don't you feel like that's unethical? If
I
you
do.
present an offer, if you send that over, if it's in writing, even if the seller doesn't see it or it doesn't get conveyed to the seller, I think that's where we have like an ethics violation in regards to a listing agent if they're not able to communicate that back to their seller. It's like omitting something. I feel like, I mean, I feel like where there needs to be some regulation there. On our team, what I've had our girls do is I've created a cover sheet. I shared it in the Access Leaders thing. I make them send that over. Sometimes even before they send the full offer over, I'm having them send the cover letter, the 220 and the offer all unsigned if it's an agent you don't feel confident working with.
Yeah.
And we honestly, on our side of things, we haven't had any issues. We're having like some of our best months, but it's just slowing down and educating the other agents. We're doing a mastermind, and hopefully that helps.
Hey, Amber,
Yes.
if you guys are sending offers unsigned, then what's the difference? Because I thought about this. Let's say if I'm an agent, I'm out in the market and I'm showing all these buyers and I want to send over an offer. I just send over a summary sheet, say, here's my offer terms, here's the commission. Like, why not get the conversation started that way? Like, yeah, put that thing in writing. We're rocking and rolling. Because to me, to go through the whole process and not sign it, I may as well just save my time and write an email template. Say these are all the terms, and you go through every checkbox on the offer, and you just send that over. I mean, there's going to be a point where people have to start trusting each other.
Yeah. And that's really what our cover letter is. I tell the girls, if you're on the fly, just fill out the cover letter. All it is an email template that we just send over and fill out. And that's what commercial does. I mean, we've had
It's a letter of intent, right?
We have a $2 million piece of land that's been a letter of intent for 90 days, and it just now got to pen to paper with attorneys.
Exactly.
I think a question, just not to totally backtrack too much, but I think Anna asked, I don't know, something said that triggered this. Anyway, one question that I think would kind of like, you're going to get a lot of transparency and honest truth from buyers agents. And even Tina, I think, said this at a last meeting. Ask them the question, because if I was asked it, I'm going to be like, oh, are you currently under agency with this agent, and have you communicated what your expected compensation is? And what is that? I mean, there's no like harm in asking like, what have you told your buyer your commission is? Because then you can almost anticipate what will come with their offer. You can also find out like, are these people even under agency? Because if they're not even under agency, you're wasting your time, spinning your wheels, worried that you scared them off, when in all reality, maybe these people aren't even showing these homes or not even showing these clients or customers yet. Like, I think there's going to be those buyers that are promising that they don't have to sign anything until they can promise that their commissions will be paid, right? So I think that would be worth asking. Just maybe find out like, what is already your agreed upon compensation with this client, if you don't mind me asking, right? And I think that's going to get the conversation rolling. And then when you do respond and say, okay, great, well, we are buyer agent friendly. I've already had this conversation with my seller. So I highly encourage, if you're going to check out the house and write an offer, to include that, period. And then that's going to instill confidence that we know what to expect from them as far as commission goes, and they feel a little bit more promise that it's going to happen.
Can I add to that?
Mm-hmm.
On a listing I put live last weekend, I'm realizing that it's just going to be agent to agent communication. Of course, it's been a lot of texts and quick conversations. And I tend to be kind of optimistic, but I think this is all going to work out really well. And the good agents are going to rise to the top, and a lot of people are going to quit. And it's going to be better for the rest of us. So I haven't really had any issue. I mean, people are just asking the normal question: is your seller offering compensation in a text? And I just say, we're not putting out a specific number. Please, send me a 220 with whatever you need covered of what you're charging your buyer. And I'm not asking them, what are you charging, just because I don't think I need to get into that. But just kind of putting it out there, like, what are you, putting it out there without directly asking, like just saying, of whatever you're charging for them, put in what you need covered. And I've had really good response from that.
Trevor, did you get an offer on that house? Or did you get any multiple offers on that?
No multiple offers yet. I'm texting actually with somebody right now.
Okay. I was just curious, did you get any 220s from the buyer agents asking for them to be signed and returned?
I did, yeah. And it was interesting. One that came in had an expiration date like a year out, which is fine because, the contract already says whichever happens first, closing or this date, So I don't think that date really matters as long as it's long enough to get through escrow. But they asked for 2.4%, and I had already had the conversation with the sellers ahead of time. They were okay with it, so we signed it and returned it. And that's the person I'm texting with now. And it seems like they're going to offer.
Because the thing is, I mean, the contract's still negotiable. So whether you sign 2.4% and your house is listed for 700 and the buyers come in at 650, well, that doesn't matter, because if you don't sign the offer, the 220 has nothing to do with it. So it's
That's
like
right.
a reasonable
It's
offer.
all subject to the offer, just like everything.
Correct.
Well, I think the reason I was wanting to ask the agent the minute they call and say, what is your seller offering? It's almost like if we're all asking the question to redirect it back to the first part of the process, which is, what did you negotiate? What did you sit down with your buyer and express to them what you would be, what your costs are, your fees are, or whatever. Yes, I did do that. Okay, great. So there's a number. What's that number? Oh, great. It's right in the range. If they say 2.4, perfect. That's exactly what we talked about. You're right in the range. It's a red light. So redirecting them back to that is the first part of the process. It's not what your seller's offering. What are you charging? What is your compensation with your buyer? And I think that's really important to get these people thinking that way, that it's not just what the seller's offering. It's what are you charging your buyer? Great. Well, we have the opportunity to get that covered here on this listing.
Yeah, that's good. I like how you said that. Nice.
Well, it's going to be a lot of educating. Edumacating.
It is. And I think it's going to be the way we say things and someone else says it and then you go, wow, that feels. And what I was telling Tina yesterday, it's like having different options for what feels like you is going to be the most critical piece. Because if we all feel like we have to say the same thing and it's like, this doesn't feel like me, but I can say it in a different way, well, then maybe I'm going to use it and it's going to work, but it's got to feel like something that would come out of my mouth, right? Like, how do you get through that with scripting? Everything is not one size fits all. So if we're having more conversations of how are we getting people through and what objections are we going through and what are we handling, and you hear one that resonates with you, well, maybe it might be easier to deliver, and then you're helping your client better because you can deliver it in a way that makes sense. So anyone else have any questions or objections we can chat about?
The only trouble I've had at all with this was on the buyer side, really before the changes happened. I was trying to proactively get ahead and kind of use it for practice for this 220 process. And it was an agent that's very experienced. They've been doing this like 30 or 40 years. And it was just more of a stuck in their own ways. And, oh, don't you hate all these changes? And, kind of making fun of the process. And then just getting the pushback on the, seller side, checking the box for the seller. First time presenting it, had to do the, save the email to dot loop kind of thing, like we talked about on that, on the call with Anna, a couple weeks ago. So it was kind of funny. It came up immediately first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like everyone is, I guess, I don't know, it feels like people really are hunkering down into how they feel about it. So I know I have been, like, I've been very, like, I've taken it very personally because I feel like it's taken a lot of work to educate our team to get our systems and processes up. And so I think I've become like almost a little defensive in our system because I'm like, no, agent, I've put in hours and hours and hours over the last month learning all these new things, watching all of these trainings. Like, and so then when it doesn't go my way, I get frustrated, right? And I know I've got to get out of my own head on that too. But I think that is a little bit, some of it too, is just like, we're all independent contractors. We all like do our own thing. And so like now it's just, like I'm very defensive. I'm like, no, my process is right. Dang it. Listen to me.
Well, you know what's funny,
dumb.
Anna? There's a couple agents that even, again, 20-year veterans, they heard you speaking and they were like, we don't agree with Anna. She just seemed like, she's going this way and she's made a hard stance. I'm like, but that's her right. That's what she believes. And again, I think we're going to have so many people that just navigate this differently. And, the market will tell us eventually what the buyers and sellers want. And I'm still convinced that we've had flat fee brokers for 40, 50 years. We've had FSBOs. The market has already shared with us that we want sellers to pay commissions and buyers, are probably not going to pay. And I think it'll eventually just go back to that norm. So
sellers will easily make themselves the Ryan Holmes of the market. And that's fine.
That's right. They will.
Our office just love them so much. But on any platform I have, please go show my listings. We're buyer agent friendly. I love it.
So are we. There's one in Fuquay. Go get it.
Right.
All right. Awesome.
All right,
Well, do we have someone lined up for next week, Anna?
Yes. I can tell you, Lauren Wagner from April's team, she was on our access meeting a couple weeks ago, just talking about like what Sarah was sharing, like getting in front of them in a consultation style environment prior to showing what that looks like for her. She did a great job when she was in the office with us a couple weeks ago. And as we were scheduling out, I was like, oop, not everyone on our Empower call is at our all access passes. I know we have lots of people that are outside of our organization that chime in and are plugged in here. So we'll have Lauren next week on and we'll get that advertising out soon.
Nice. Thanks, everybody.
It's great to start the day with you all. Made my mindset stronger.
Thanks, Sarah and Trevor, for last minute roping you in.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, no, thanks for doing it. We all need to practice.